The other day I was looking at watches on eBay, and I saw something a little different, a little unique. It came out a few years ago from a small micro brand based out of Boston. The price was right, so I bid. So today we're going to take a look at the Zinvo Blade. Chances are you have never heard of Zinvo watches. And to be blunt, there really isn't much of a reason you should have. They are a small micro brand out of Boston, Massachusetts, who seem to specialize in what I would call unique modern design. Although right now they seem to have only a few models in their collection. Their main flagship collection seems to be this, the Blade line. Now, all of the blades have the same design, which include a turbine-like fan instead of a second hand. The only difference between each watch in the Blade collection is each has its own color scheme. Now, I couldn't find this specific model on their collections page, so I assume it's an older design that's probably been phased out. But I think it should still give a good representation with the Blade line as well as what Zinvo watches are all about. So let's get to the watch and straight away get to what's most important, the dial. Now let's go front to back. On the very front you have a sapphire crystal, which seems to have a Zinvo logo applied to the back of the crystal. Beneath that is the turning turbine fan blade thing, which I assume is where the name originates. This turbine fan replaces what would normally be the second hand of your watch. When doing some research on this watch, I found something interesting that I just wanted to point out. On some of the early reviews, but not all of them, the turbine looks more like a flat plastic disc where you can actually see the plastic in between each blade. If you look closely at this watch, that is not the case. Looking at this specific watch, you can see that each blade of that fan wheel is nicely cut out from the rest. And instead of being a flat plastic disc, you can see that there's some height to it as there's a raised cap in the middle of its fan blade. Now, I can't tell you for certain what it is actually made of, but I can say that it at least looks like it's made out of metal that is laser etched out. I will say that the fan blades are a mixed blessing. While it's very cool and very unique, each individual blade is indistinguishable from each other, so you can't really use this as a second hand. Beneath the turbine, we have the hour and minute hands, both in black with orange tips. Although it can be very difficult to see those hands, or at least anything other than the tips, behind the fan blades. Beneath that, you have a simple shiny black dial, where you can also see a date at the 3 o'clock position, which you can occasionally make out in between each fan blade. It has black text with a white background. Moving outward, you can see the chapter ring, which looks like it's made out of the same material and coating as the case. 2 different sized holes make up the hour indicators on that chapter ring, which add to the modern industrial vibe of the watch. Now, finally looking at the case itself, it is made out of stainless steel. You can see that it has a matte black finish with machined edges that go around it on either side. At the 3 o'clock position is the crown, which you can see also has small holes drilled into it to match the chapter ring. Now, I will say that the finishing of this watch is very nice, which I was pleasantly surprised at, especially considering the number of edges that are along the side of the case. Nothing is sharp and everything is nice and smooth, or as smooth as you can get with a brush texture. Now moving to the lugs, you can see that they look like little brackets or legs that are directly screwed to the case. And just like the case itself, they are very nicely finished, and it greatly adds to that modern industrial look. Now, moving to the back of the watch, you can see that it has an exhibition case back, with a very cool looking customized rotor for Zinvo. Attached to the rotor and powering the watch itself is a Miyota 8215 movement, which is probably the weakest point of this watch. The 8215 is okay. It keeps time okay, but not great. It doesn't hack, but in this case it's not really a problem. but it does have an indirect driven second hand, which is known to cause the second hand to stutter, which I think is actually exaggerated on this watch with that larger turbine. And lastly, we come to the strap, which is actually pretty nice. It's a nice thick black leather with an accompanying black signed buckle. Now let's get a quick wrist shot in, as well as the dimensions of the watch itself. The blade is 44mm wide without the crown, 48mm with the crown. It has 24mm wide straps. Now, the blade is a touch on the large side for me, but not too much. Thickness-wise isn't too bad, but maybe a little tall. But it definitely has a weight to it, sitting around 110 grams. So you definitely know you're wearing it, but it's not uncomfortably heavy. Now, there is no lume on this watch, and I mention it more because I think it's a missed opportunity. If you were to add lume on all the fan blades, I think it would have definitely upped the cool factor of this watch. Or better yet, add lume on all but one of the fan blades, and then you could have used it as a second hand. With anything, you have to take price into account. New, the Zinvo Blade runs about $230. On the upside is that at that price, you're getting a very cool, unique design. A watch that is definitely a conversation starter, which has a great finish as well as a sapphire crystal as well. Now, there are 3 downsides that I see to this watch. The first is the movement, which really isn't anything wrong with the movement, but it's just an okay movement at that price. The second thing is the usability of the watch. I like having a second hand on a watch. Even on a dress watch, I would prefer to have a second hand. So while this has a second hand, it's not really a usable second hand. And lastly, the design, which I also listed as a positive, but sometimes that's how it is with design. Now, while I may think the watch is cool, I can see how it's also very gimmicky, and I can also see how a lot of people really wouldn't like the industrial look to it. And to be honest, after wearing this watch to test it out and get a feel for it, I haven't really worn it again. I haven't really felt like it. There always seems to be something else I would rather put on my wrist. Now, before we go any further with this review, I feel that there's something I really need to address. While doing research on the watch, as well as the company itself, I found some people commenting throughout the various corners of the internet that they had very negative experiences when dealing with the company Zinvo. Now, I bought my watch on eBay, so I have zero first-hand experience when dealing with the company Zinvo, so I won't really talk about this much more, other than to say that if you are interested in this watch, I would highly encourage you to do a little bit of research on your own before buying it. Now, thanks to the internet, and in many ways thanks to Kickstarter as well, there are a lot of micro-brand watch companies out there. And just like Zinvo, many of them are making very unique, very cool timepieces. But the thing we have to remember is that unique doesn't always mean universally appealing. If I had to give a recommendation on this watch, it would probably be no. While I like the design, I also don't see myself wearing it very much. But I find it very difficult to give any review on a watch this unique. And that's kind of how it is with a lot of these unique micro-brand watches. They're all about their own individual style that you're either going to like or hate. The best I can do is just describe the quality to you, which in this case is very good. And then it's up to you to make your own decision. In many ways, these unique micro-brand watches are really like art that live on your wrist. The beauty and the appeal of each piece is truly in the eye of the beholder. So you just have to ask yourself, what do you see when you look at it? Let me know what you think of the design in the comments, or if there are any other micro-brands that you find interesting. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe.